Hello, Kathy. How are you?
Hello, Raul. I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing great too. It's been a very busy week for me,
A
and
good week?
it has been a good week, but very, very extremely challenging and busy. And but we make it all to work. I am currently at a coffee shop. There are not many people. I just, have to do some stuff that has a very high degree of importance for my company, and I just have to, manage it accordingly. But here we are unstoppable despite all the circumstances, and we are just gonna go all the way with the universal laws.
Okay, so now we are up to universal law number 7, the law of resistance. So let's go to the next slide. The law of resistance means that whatever you resist persists. Take me, for example. Every time I get on the road, I get behind a big old truck because that's one of my key things that I hate. That which I resist persists. So every single time I get behind the big truck, I should practice what I'm preaching, right?
What about the computers?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, that was Gary, bless his heart, my partner, Gary. We went through 3 computers this week. None of them worked. He had to keep running to Micro Center. They actually gave him a new computer because the one that he just bought a month ago, just stopped working, just crashed. Crazy, huh? So the law of resistance means that whatever you resist persists. Whatever your mind focuses on, you attract more of it to you. Most people don't even know that they're invoking the law of resistance, which is really triggered by their belief that they are a victim. Next slide. They make statements such as, I don't want to get sick. Well, the universe hears sick, and guess what it brings? Sickness. Their mind is focused on the negative thought of sickness instead of saying, I am in perfect health. Now, with this positive statement, the universe hears perfect health and brings in perfect health. Next slide. Using words such as I can't or I don't will invoke the law of resistance. Stop saying or thinking what you don't want and start stating what you do want. And I have to be honest with you, Raul. When I was in my negaholic stage and I discovered this law of resistance, I was embarrassed because I was guilty of saying I can't or I don't an awful lot. And I had no idea that I was going to be triggering the law of resistance. So stop saying what you don't want and start saying what you do want. So you won't trigger the law of resistance. Next.
So if we want to be a little bit more in depth of that, what's the difference between the law of resistance with the law of attraction?
Well, they're both intermingled. Whatever you say you don't want, that which you resist persists, and it is also connected to the law of attraction. You end up attracting that which you don't want. But anything that you say you don't want, that is resistance. So that is what we mean by resistance, but it also triggers the law of attraction. So the two are connected.
Wouldn't you say that resistance has to be more like fear
It's
of?
always fear. It's all about fear. Yeah, and as we get into the presentation, we're going to talk about that too. All about fear. You are so right. Now, let's talk about the positive law of resistance. How many of you are asked to fill out a medical questionnaire at your doctor's office that asks you to list any illnesses your family members have had? I have. Every time I go to a new doctor, that's the first thing they have me do. After the doctor reviews the questionnaire, they comment that, for example, diabetes seems to run in your family. Your chances of getting diabetes are high. They,
Well, well, let's elaborate on that a little bit deeper.
mhm,
There's no doubt that you know science can have the ability to predict an illness through data history from your parents.
yeah,
So how how this is contradicting, you know, a scientific method of data that could eventually warn you about an illness.
go to the next slide. Our mainstream medium takes the approach that family genes are passed down from one generation to the next. And this is what my friend was told. Your mother and grandmother had cancer, so your chances of getting cancer are higher. And what did she say? I don't want to get cancer. So we have science, and then we have the mind. And if the mind chooses to follow science, then this poor woman is going to be worried about getting cancer. But if you understand that the power of the mind can say, I only accept perfect health, then you're not going to be living your life in fear. So that's what we're talking about here. You always going to come back to the same thing. Science said that I would never be able to raise my arm above this high when I shattered my shoulder. But I refused to accept it. And you see my arm, don't you? The doctor couldn't believe it. Now, I was in my 60s when I broke my arm, and yet he said I was his fair-haired child because none of his other patients seemed to be able to do what I did. Now, how did I do that? Through the power of the mind, knowing that God has given me this ability to heal myself. Or I can dwell on what might happen. I don't want to get cancer. And what you dwell on, you attract, right? So that's what we're talking about here.
That's so interesting because now we are talking about a quantum phenomena, which
Mhm,
basically is trying to explain that there is a sort of energy that comes to your mind, and from your mind is like change the chemical reactions at the DNA level that allow people to cure cancer
yep.
or cure other diseases
Mhm,
with just having this um, cleanse of emotions
mhm,
through positive emotions and through obviously meditation combined with all of these mindset.
that's true.
And so more and more researchers are also looking into that.
It's very true. And there was a book written over 20 years ago by Louise Hay called You Can Heal Your Life. And in the back of the book, she has a glossary of of sickness, whatever it is, cancer or whatever the ailment is, and the emotional cause. And then she gives you positive affirmations to affirm perfect health. And boy, was that an eye opener for me when I went to the back of the book and looked up a few of the ailments that I had. And it was dead on, Raul. I can tell you right now, it was completely dead on. So not only do we make ourselves sick worrying, I don't want to get cancer, but our emotions, whether it's anger, unforgiveness, fear, all of the other emotions can actually make our body sick. So we learn through these experiences how much power we really have to overcome these. We don't have to accept this. When I filled out my questionnaire, I had a bunch of people in my life with cancer. And what do you think the first thing out of the doctor's mouth was? Oh, I see your sister had cancer. Well, that puts you at a pretty high risk. And I just smiled and said, well, we'll watch that, won't we? So these statements, I don't want to get cancer, this statement activated the law of resistance, which meant that the word cancer is what the universe heard, which could result in that which she didn't want to be drawn to her. That's the law of attraction. Now, fortunately, I told her about this book that Louise Hay wrote. And she understood after reading this book, and she chose to change her thoughts and words. And she chose to say, I am so grateful for my perfect health. I bless my body and I thank it for being so healthy. Every day I give thanks for my perfect health. And she is 20 years later, she hasn't had cancer. So you never know. I see the difference. The universe heard perfect health, and she has maintained perfect health well into her 60s. Remember this, your mind will always override your genes. Our mind is connected to God. And if we choose, we can override anything. We have the power through thoughts to create perfect health. Okay?
So, and the beautiful thing about this is that more and more scientists and and more researchers are like basically acknowledging this. Like Deepak Chopra state this term quantum healing, which basically said that our consciousness uh, does not just control the function of our brain and nervous system, but also, controls our emotions, control how those affect, us in a way that can cure illness.
Yes.
So that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Now let's talk about the negative law of resistance. My friend Carol was raised in a family with an abusive father who physically abused her mother and the children. At a young age, she vowed that she would never marry an abusive man. She had no idea that her words would attract the very thing she resisted. Sure enough, she ended up marrying a man who was just as abusive as her father. So, next slide. Fortunately for her, she was actually somebody who came to me for coaching. And I explained to her that which you resist persists. When you made the statement, I'll never marry a man like my father, you actually put into action the fact that you will attract that same kind of man. So when she was made aware of the law of resistance and realized she had the power to change her words and attract something better, she left her abusive husband and spent time thinking about the kind of man that she did want to meet. Next slide. The universe heard wonderful, loving, caring, funny man and set about bringing him to her. And believe it or not, she is now happily remarried to a wonderful, loving, caring, funny man.
Okay, let's put some reality on this. Not
Yep.
that people doesn't believe this,
Mm-hmm.
um, but many times I have heard from friends uh, and even myself. Sometimes you sort of think the positive, right?
Yeah.
And but for some reason it does not happen.
Mm-hmm.
So
Especially when you meet an abusive man. When a woman ends up with an abusive man who says, if you leave me, I will kill you. And I've had a lot of them come to me. The first thing I ask them is, what was your relationship with your father? And in almost every single case, he was abusive. So the first step with this particular client was to forgive her father and to understand Explain the fact that he abused you, but you can understand it. So, step number one is to forgive and release. Now, the second part, which is really scary, is when somebody says to you, if you leave me, I will kill you. She and her daughter, he said he would kill both her and her daughter. And she said, there's nothing I can do about this. And I said, yes, there is. It's called the power of love. And I said, you're not going to believe me, but I want you to give it a try. What do you have to lose? I want you to wake up every single morning, and I want you and your daughter I want you to close your eyes and send love, unconditional love to this man. Before you go to sleep at night, I want you both to do the same thing. Just take 5 minutes and send love, love, love to this man. And I'm going to tell you what'll happen. One of two things is going to happen. Number one, he will change. Or number two, he will kick you out because he can't stand it. If he's never going to change, he'll make you leave. So in anticipation of that, I want you to start preparing for where you will go to. What I didn't tell her is that usually they throw them out. And sure enough, within the month, he said, I want you and your daughter out of my house. I don't ever want to see you again. So she'd already planned a place to go. So now she and her daughter could leave, and she would not be afraid that he would track her down and kill her and her daughter. Raul, I'm telling you, love is the most powerful force in the universe. And when you forgive and then you send love, you're opening yourself up to receive that which you desire. So when I explained all of this to her, and boy, she resisted, I can tell you right now. What do you mean forgive my dad? I don't want to forgive that SOB. And I said, you're not forgiving him for him. You're forgiving him for you. You're the one who will benefit from this. So the next law we come to is the universal law of attachment. So let's see what that's all about. Next slide. The law of attachment means that you can have whatever you desire, but if you believe that your happiness or identity of who you think you are depends on it, then you are attached to it. Whatever you are attached to can end up controlling your thoughts and actions. A perfect example of attachment, codependency. If you believe that you need to have your spouse or your child in your life to be happy, then you are in codependency and are bound to that person, and your love for that person is conditional. In other words, I'll love you only if you act or do things the way I say. You cling to this person for your own self-worth, not for the joy of a loving relationship. Generations of families cling to the way things have always been done, never realizing that they are holding themselves in bondage. Like the slide says, I'm easy to please, just do it my way.
My way or no way, huh?
Yep, my way or the highway. People remain in dull, boring, unfulfilling jobs because of their fear of the unknown. Many times this is due to programming they received from family and friends that says, you need to stay in that safe and secure job and forget going off half-cocked on some crazy idea of a business you want to start. My parents' words when I opened my building company. My parents freaked out when I told them that I was leaving that highly lucrative on-site sales agent job where I was the top agent in the United States, and I was going to become a home builder. They freaked out. But fortunately, I'd been working on myself, so I could say to them, Mom and Dad, I want you to understand something. I've given a lot of thought to this, and I want to lay it out for you. I laid out to her the money I had saved and put away, enough to live on for almost a year. And all my bills were paid. I didn't owe anybody anything. And Mr. Clary was going to give me his lots to build on, and I didn't have to pay him until the house closed. And he got me a superintendent who wouldn't be paid until the house closed. And I said to my parents, what do I have to lose? So I was able to walk them through so they were able to release their fears. Now, a lot of kids can't do that, but I was able, knowing my parents just wanted what was best for me. They loved me. They didn't want to see me get hurt. And if parents, if you can do this, it's a wonderful thing. If you want to start your own business and everybody's freaking out, do what I did. Lay it out for them. Don't scream and yell and say, you don't want me to be successful. Be patient with them. They're just thinking about you and they just want to do the right thing by you. True?
Oh, absolutely. I can relate to that. Um, when I left corporate America and I went all entrepreneurship, I didn't know what I was doing. The only thing I know deep in my heart is that I have to do it. Um, and even I didn't have a plan. I just want freedom
Mm-hmm.
and I just want to have the possibility to do a impact, positive impact, and enjoy the journey of creating something new.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's not easy.
And it was not easy, and sometimes I was not I was misunderstood because it's like, uh, you know, sometimes people think that it's easy, and it's not. So,
No, it's not. Definitely. But fear of the unknown holds so many people back, Raul. And I've had a lot of people come to me and they hate their jobs, yet they don't know what to do about it. And I've worked them through pulling out exactly what they would love to do and figuring out a way that they can move into that new career without just jumping off a cliff. And as long, because your subconscious mind is an order taker, and you can make all the statements in the world, I'm going to be really successful in this new business. But if you're thinking, what have I gotten myself into? Oh my gosh, that is what your subconscious mind hears. So I have learned that when you fear something, to overcome that fear, you have to convince yourself of what you will do to release that fear. And as soon as, because you take me, I mean, I used to travel all over the United States teaching courses from my mortgage training institute. But I found myself turning down jobs because I hated to travel. I hated it so much. And then it hit me, my gosh, Kathy, you're losing money. What would change this? Well, if I could upgrade to business class, if I could have a limo pick me up instead of dragging my luggage off the turnstile and take me to the hotel, if I could eat better food because I bought cheap food, hire an assistant, a temp, to open the boxes and distribute the books to the students, all of these things, if that would make it better. And I'm thinking, yeah, Miss Millionaire, who do you think you are? And then I said, well, wait a minute, exactly how much would it cost me to do that? And I sat down and I calculated upgrading to every single thing I just talked about. And you know what, Raul? I only had to get 3 more students in each class to justify upgrading to now I would not be so miserable. And that was easy thing to do. And as soon as I got those 3 extra students and I was riding in the business class and having the limo pick me up and a temp signing people in and passing out the materials, and I was getting better food on the menu, wow, my business just exploded. So you see how we sabotage ourselves. But because I was raised in a family that had to pinch pennies, that was my thinking. I got to pinch pennies. And I had to convince myself that I deserved that extra upgrade simply by getting 3 more students, I could pay for it. So these are the things that we have to teach ourselves, don't we? Because I deserve it. You deserve it. Whoever this girl is, she deserves it too, right? One of the things we all need to learn is their need to please, codependency, is stronger than their desire to be happy. How many times have I coached people with just that issue? But my dad says, but my mom says, what do you say? That's codependency.
And tend to be also manipulation.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. Okay. Positive law of attachment is to realize that you are holding yourself back from being all that you can be by your need to cling to outdated or restrictive thoughts and actions. Next slide. We see this happen many times in a family-owned business where the patriarch of the family wants to keep running the business the way it's always been run and resists new innovative ideas that his or her child who works in the business offers that could take the business to a whole new level of success. I have seen this happen over and over again. Next slide.
But what would be a good example for this?
Well, if you go to the next slide, I'm going to show you. A friend of mine who ran into this situation and talked to me about it, I gave her a little tip. She decided to slowly ease in some suggestions for improvement. And she went to her mother and she asked her questions such as, Mom, have you heard about this new way of doing such and such? What's that all about? Instead of forcefully saying, Mom, you need to get with the times. This new idea is much better than what we're doing now, and we should switch to it.
Yeah,
That's how.
but yeah, but this is more like a communication issue, not
Yes,
understanding that not all the persons receive the communication in a way that moves them.
I love to watch the Hallmark Channel, Raul, because the Hallmark Channel many times will have this very situation in one of their 2-hour movies. And it's all about communication and bringing the family together and easing them in. And they always show the two sides. Okay, here's the guy who wants to bust through the way we've always been doing it, and he and his father aren't talking. Well, here is the woman who takes a gentler approach and who goes to dad and says, Look at this, Dad. What do you think of this idea? I've been doing a little research, and you know what? I bet we could work right past these people. We've got a much better product, don't you think? And of course, the dad says, Well, yeah, we certainly do. And she said, Well, what can we do, Dad? I don't know what to do. What would you do? And all the time, she's got the whole plan laid out. It's all ego, Raul, isn't it? A lot of it is just ego, whether it's from the patriarch and the matriarch, or whether it's from the kid who wants to spread his or her wings. There you go.
I believe it's a combination of things. Um, Also, personalities. Not everybody will receive your communication as you are intended to be understood.
Yeah.
And, there are people that their personality, that do, you need to adapt your message to the personality of the person.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes,
not because that person is bad, it's just because that's his way of being.
that's exactly right. That's the way it's always been done. Have you ever heard the story about the newlywed girl who was going to bake a ham for her husband, and she called her mother to ask her how to cook the ham, and her mother said, "Well, you have to cut the ends off of the ham before you cook it." Well, why do I do that? That's the way it's always been done. Just do it. So then she went to her grandmother And she said, Mom says I need to cut the ends off of the ham before I bake it. What do you think? Yeah, that's the way to do it. But why am I doing it? And the grandmother said, that's the way it's always been done. Just do it. And then she goes to a family reunion and her great grandmother is there. And she went up to her and said, great grandmother, grandma, and mom say when I bake a ham, I have to cut both of the ends off. And they say that's just the way it's always been done and that I should do it. And what do you think? Well, the great grandmother started laughing. And she said, honey, do you know why I cut the ends of the ham off? Because the pan was too small for it to fit in. So here we have three generations doing something because that's the way it's always been done, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
all the time it was just because the pan wasn't big enough. Crazy, huh?
crazy.
Okay, so this is a surefire way for the person to get on the defensive and dig in their heels. Because of my friend's loving, gentle way of making suggestions, asking her mother what she thought, her mother was open and receptive. And the new ideas were implemented, resulting in a huge jump in business. And it worked. The negative law of attachment. This is a true story. A woman I once worked with who only had one child, a son, constantly put down every woman her son brought over to meet her, declaring them not good enough for him. Next slide. She had divorced when her son was still a baby and never remarried, which resulted in an unhealthy codependency. In her mind, her happiness was tied up in that relationship. And if her son married, he would leave her with nothing but loneliness. It never occurred to her that his marriage could result in a loving relationship with her daughter in law and wonderful time spent with her grandchildren. She chose to dwell on her fears instead of her hopes. Her son chose to remain bound in this codependency tangle, never marrying and continuing to live at home. The few times I spent with these two were sad and depressing. They were both miserable, yet they were not prepared to allow any changes in their life. So understand every law, every universal law has a positive law and a negative law. And of course, our goal is to help people realize this and follow the positive law. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, but I wouldn't define as good or bad. I will just define as lack of information.
Yep. And that's our job to teach them, right?
Yeah, it's just if we don't know how we will use it, right? It's like if we don't have the knowledge, how we will be able to, to make things happen for us in a good way,
That's right.
right? That's I think that's the angle I would like to give.
And if people understood that God wants only good things for them and stop beating themselves up and remember that they are spiritual beings having this human experience and they come here to make mistakes. Apparently, you grow a lot quicker spiritually when you make a lot of mistakes. And God never judges them because that's why we came here to make mistakes. And if people would realize that God only wants you to be happy and has given you all the tools to make that happen, if you can just learn how to utilize these wonderful tools that God has set up for us, right?
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. That's very interesting, Kathy. But we have been talking about the universal laws um, and all that. I think for our next Thursdays, I really would like to get even deeper in some some concepts, right? Like, um, for instance, um, I was thinking about how we can raise our energy, meaning how we can become the best version of ourselves.
Yes. The first, you want to know what worked for me?
Yeah,
Because remember, I'm a reformed negaholic. So, and it's embarrassing to share some of this, but the fact of the matter is that I had many people come into my life who guided and directed me. And I am so very grateful for that. But the most important thing they taught me was awareness, because being aware is the first step to change. For example, the rubber band that I wore around my wrist, as one person suggested. And every time I thought or said something negative, I popped it. Well, man, it didn't take me long to realize, my gosh, all I'm doing is popping this rubber band. I must really be negative. But that was the beginning of change. And when I started saying something like, I might say, for example, oh my gosh, this traffic is terrible. No, wait a minute. Wait a minute. My drive to work is smooth and easy. And you know what? My drive to work was smooth and easy. So when you learn that your thoughts and your words create your reality, you learn by coming aware of it, whether it's to wear the rubber band or hit the space between your eyes like you're canceling clearing on your computer. Because sometimes I'll say, oh my gosh, what a awful day outside. Oh, wait a minute, cancel clear, cancel clear. It's a beautiful day. With the rain that we're getting, it's going to make the flowers beautiful. So you start slowly, and awareness is your first step. And then, in that 4-step program that we talk about, from powerless to powerful in 4 simple steps, awareness is step 1. And then you learn the different techniques and skills that God has made available to us, whether it's positive affirmations or creative visualization or all of the other things that we teach in that class. And then you begin to see your life starting to change.
yeah, absolutely.
What I'd like to do, I would like to challenge, if anybody's listening, I would like to challenge you to try one thing. And the next time you are going someplace where you need to get a parking place, as you're driving to that place, I want you to say, the perfect parking place is here for me right now. And I thank you for bringing this to me. Gary and I do this every Friday when we go to our Chinese restaurant because the parking lot is always packed. And Raul, would you believe it takes us 5 minutes to get to this restaurant? And the whole 5 minutes we're saying, thank you for the perfect parking space. The parking space is right up front. And 99% of the times we have gotten that perfect parking space. And you know what a tough nut to crack Gary was. So Gary has learned after 28 years together that these things really work. He notices when we do these affirmations and we think positive that our business picks up or we get the perfect parking place. So this is what I would like to challenge people to start small. Just affirm the perfect parking place. And if you start thinking, well, this isn't going to work, cancel clear. Nope, nope, nope. I'm going to accept the perfect parking place.
That's so awesome. One of the curious thing, and maybe this is something that we can talk over the next day, so that we can come with some new messages to our audience, is about how to deal with circumstances that happens to us. What's the message, right? And I have been reading a lot about near death and experiences.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of masters that have been discussing about um, what is the purpose of our souls, why sometimes you need to go through painful situations. and and how to interpret that, right?
Hmm.
So maybe this could be a good topic for our sources, how to go
Actually,
around.
one of my favorite topics.
Yeah. So I think we can talk about that.
Yes, yes, I have read wonderful, wonderful stories of people who have had near death experiences.
Yeah. So I think maybe we can talk about that. We can talk about what's the difference between an spiritual being, what soul is, what is what is consciousness and mindfulness,
Hmm.
how our brain is connected to those sources. Um, I think that's something that um, we're now taking to the next level of awareness when we start putting all the things together,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And that definitely will derive in more knowledge. And myself, I will have to research a little bit more. I have been so write this name because I think you will find this gentleman a very fascinating persona. His name is Gerardo, Gerardo, Gerardo Smelding, SC as in Charlie, H M de Maria, E as in Eduardo, D as in Diane, L like Lima, ING. Gerardo Schmelding. He was able to channelize some very interesting messages, and he make a book of it.
Hmm.
And this gentleman is from Colombia, actually, and he has an institute you know, um, of personal and human development, and based on that information that he was able to channelize.
Hmm. That's
And I
wonderful.
and I am reading, well, listening to other people that took a program with him. He's not with us anymore. He transcended 10 years ago. But I was very very fascinated how he clearly explained how the subconscious, consciousness, all that chain of things, how he was able to explain why a baby has cancer and die, why sometimes we see so many situations happening all around us that tends to be very negative, and how to deal with that, how to understand that for us.
Yeah.
What really is dying for,
Mm.
what's the concept of dying
Yeah.
and all that. And I find it very, very fascinating. So
Yeah.
that's if we are able to elaborate on that, I think that will really give minimal, meaningful. Uh,
I agree.
it will be super great.
I agree. I had a girlfriend whose child drowned in their swimming pool when he was 2 years old, I think. And he would have now been in his 20s, but it affected her so deeply that she ended up in a mental hospital. And she spent 20 something years feeling guilty that she was sitting by the pool with her son and the phone rang and she simply stood up to walk in, pick it up, and come back out to the pool. And in that 3 minutes, he jumped in and drowned. And she felt that guilt for all of those years. And I put her in touch with a friend of mine named Jack Moon. And we actually brought a lot of people together in a circle with her friends and my friends and Jack Moon, who's a well known psychic. He's retired now down in Florida, beautiful soul. And when he looked at Darlene, he said to her, "Your son is here." Jason says hello. Well, I didn't tell Jack what her son's name was. Well, of course, immediately Darlene started crying, just burst out in tears. And he said, Jason wants you to know that he never meant to hurt you, that he had just come for a short period of time and he was ready to go on home. And he's tried so many times to let you know that he was okay. And then he went on to explain several different times. And Darlene said, I never understood what they meant. I thought I had a ghost or something. But that connection that she had with her son Jason and what my friend Jack Moon was able to do for her changed her life. And she was able to let go and finally understand that Jason is doing just fine, that he just wanted to come for a short time for whatever his lessons were that he wanted to learn. And he never thought it would affect her so deeply. And he was very, very sorry about that. So when you die, you just go back home. You're in this beautiful place again, but it affects the people that are still here, you know? So that's another thing that near death experiences can help a lot of people understand.
Yeah, and that's actually, I think that's the service that I believe we are supposed to elaborate for all people that will see eventually these videos.
Yeah.
Um, and
And
so
you
that,
know what's interesting, Raul? The what is it that does the studies every 10 years? The uh, where they do a study on everything. And one of the things every 10 years that they do was a study on people who had near death experiences. And up until 1990, when they did those, uh, what is it? The something world records. What is it? The Guinness
Guinness.
Book of World Records. That's what I'm thinking. The what they found was one person in every 2,000 would have in America would have a near death experience. But in 1990, when they did the research, they were shocked when they tallied everything up. And 1 in 8 Americans in 1990, when they interviewed, 1 in 8 Americans had a near death experience.
Wow.
Well, we know why, because God wants us now to understand. We're moving into the golden age. God wants us to know how it really works. So a lot of people are having near death experiences so they can come back and tell everybody this is what heaven is really all about.
Yeah.
Wonderful stories. So I can't wait to share them.
Okay. All right. Well, we need to go. I want to acknowledge you, Kathy, for being my friend and for always having this spirit of service. I wanted to make it work despite any circumstance. Um, I learned also um, that we are not perfect. We are tend to we are imperfect human beings to seeking to perfection. But I believe the only perfect source is our celestial Father.
But we are a reflection of that celestial Father. We are perfect in the sight of God, and we will always be perfect in God's sight, no matter what we do.
Oh, absolutely, because
Absolutely.
because He is full love, you know. But
Absolutely.
sometimes we are very hard on ourselves when we make a
Mhm.
mistake or stupidity. We say, "How I
Uh-huh.
did that?" And then I think one of the things I learned, obviously, ask for forgiveness and then forgive yourself.
Absolutely. That's the tough
Yeah.
one, forgiving yourself.
Forgiving yourself.
Mhm.
That's the tough one. And I am saying by experience that's that one.
Absolutely.
But
I'm guilty too. I admit it. I'm guilty. I'm guilty. I can forgive everybody else, but I have a hard time forgiving myself.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And so here in this journey, and I'm very happy to take this path with you and share this with people that eventually will see this video. Also, I want to warn you that when we place this video in Facebook, I see some sort of weird messages that are people that I have never met in my life, and with fake profiles, and so I have to block them. So, I'm very careful with whatever is happening. So, for people that wants to really throw a comment uh, through the videos, be genuine, be authentic, and you just you know want to provide an opinion that doesn't add any value but is misleading, we will block you. I want
Mhm.
you to to know that we will block you.
Yes. I have gotten them on my Miracle Queen Facebook page.
Uh, so
Really.
for all,
Very unhappy people. We
yeah,
just send them lots of love and blessing, but we're still going to block you.
yeah. So be nice, be respectful, be genuine, be authentic. That's it. All right.
Absolutely.
Goodbye, Kathy. Take care.
Take care. I love
Thanks.
you, everybody. Remember how much you are loved and that you matter.
Yeah. I love you too. And all the best. Blessings. Bye.
Bye
Take care.
bye.